And now it's my pleasure to introduce a man who will kick off today's program with the official welcome, a man who truly needs no introduction here and beyond, a man who's held ascending leadership positions at the college for more than 4 decades, but still looks to be in his 30s, maybe early 40s. Ladies and gentlemen, the able president of the Wilson campus of Miami-Dade College, Dr. Jose Vicente, or maybe today, Dr. Vincenzo.
Thank you, Juan. And good morning, bienvenuti, bienvenidos. And on behalf of Miami-Dade College Board of Trustees, our college president, Dr. Eduardo Padron, but most importantly, on behalf of the 165,000 students that attend Miami-Dade, and especially the 30,000 that attend here the Wilson campus in downtown Miami, and on behalf of my colleagues, I'd like to extend a very, very cordial welcome to all of you here today. Miami-Dade College is the largest institution of higher education in the country. It takes pride today in hosting the Miami 2015 Feeding the Planet Conference. And as Mr. Mendieta alluded to, it is the pre-launch event to the World Fair Expo Milano 2015, which will actually be taking place in Milan, Italy, from May through October of this year. In the spirit of this year's Expo theme, Feeding the Planet, Energy for Life, Miami-Dade College is hosting this day-long forum to explore America's relationship with the old world and how its diverse cultural heritage defines its identity through food, as well as heritage, and through discussions on sustainability and how new trends have impacted the health, nutrition, and tastes of an entire nation. World-renowned experts will speak today on America's relationship with the old world and how the food, health, and identity of people on both sides have and continue to evolve in a parallel yet inseparable process. As a premier educational institution of higher learning in the nation and home to Miami Culinary Institute, it is the only natural occasion for Miami-Dade College to be actually the host of this important gathering. The Miami Culinary Institute here at Miami-Dade College is a perfect blend of technology, sustainability, and world-class nutrition, as well as education. The Institute is and continues to be at the forefront of culinary and hospitality education. I'd like you to know that our students actually competed on a number of competitions statewide, and they actually came with the #1 ranking in every single category in the state of Florida, and it is indeed of great pride to all of you. In addition, its culinarium classes offer professionals as well as culinary enthusiasts many opportunities to acquire educational skills and learn new techniques. Located here in the heart of downtown Miami, the Miami Culinary Institute at Miami-Dade College is indeed a recipe for success. On behalf of all of our students and on behalf of all of my colleagues, I welcome you to Miami-Dade College. I wish you a very fruitful conference, and as we say in Spanish, nuestra casa es su casa, our home is your home. Welcome to Miami-Dade College Wilson campus.
It is now my pleasure to introduce Ms. Marie Bell from Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Jimenez's office, who will present the special proclamation on behalf of the mayor. I also invite to the stage Mr. Giovanni Fava, the health minister from the region of Lombardy, Italy, to receive the proclamation and also deliver remarks. And his remarks will be translated by Ms. Maria Bello.
On behalf of Mayor Jimenez, good morning, buenos dias, buongiorno, bonjour. Miami-Dade, the gateway to the Americas. It is resolved that on behalf of Mayor Carlos Jimenez, Mayor of Miami-Dade County and Chairman Jean Modestin, and the members of the Board of the County Commission, on behalf of the millions of residents of Miami-Dade County, we now declare Expo Milano 2015 day. Thank you.
Buongiorno, good morning, buenos dias. Sono ovviamente molto onorato e devo dire anche felice di rappresentare la Regione Lombardia e il Presidente Roberto Maroni, che vi invia da Milano i suoi saluti.
I'm very honored and happy to be here today to represent Lombardia and President Maroni, who also sends his most cordial salutations today.
La Regione Lombardia è la regione di Milano che ospita le Expo del 2015, ma è anche la prima regione europea per il cibo, per la trasformazione agroalimentare.
Lombardia is a region in Italy which is at the helm of the nutritional and food world.
Sì, circa. Una importante regione conosciuta in tutto il mondo perché per la propria vocazione industriale, ma che non ha perso una tradizione forte nel proprio comparto agroalimentare.
It's an important region in the world in terms of industrial, but at the same time it hasn't lost its roots in the food industry either.
In Lombardia noi produciamo quasi il 20% dei prodotti alimentari italiani, del Made in Italy.
In Lombardia, we produce about 20% of the made in Italy products when it comes to food.
Nella nostra regione abbiamo alcune fra le più importanti denominazioni di origine di prodotti che esportiamo in tutto il mondo e per fortuna anche negli Stati Uniti, in particolare penso al grana padano, al parmigiano reggiano, ai grandi prodotti della tradizione gastronomica italiana.
In Lombardia, we produce and export around the world, like in the United States, many important products when it comes to food. You might recognize things like parmigiano reggiano.
Per questo immagino capirete qual è il senso di responsabilità e di orgoglio anche che viviamo in questo momento, ospitando dal 1 maggio al 31 di ottobre la grande esposizione internazionale, l'Expo appunto 2015, che avrà come tema appunto Feeding the Planet, nutrire il pianeta, Energy for Life, energia per la vita. Nel luogo più importante del cibo, o fra i più importanti del cibo europeo, si celebra un evento mondiale che riguarda uno dei temi che ci interessano più da vicino.
So we take our responsibility in the event for the Expo Milano very seriously, given our background. The event which will take place from May 1st until October 31st.
Noi crediamo fortemente nella distintività del cibo di qualità. Noi crediamo che questo Expo potrà essere un successo politico, non solo se affronterà i temi della distribuzione del cibo del pianeta, ma se affronterà il tema mai affrontato in precedenza, la qualità e della sostenibilità del cibo stesso.
We believe very much in the quality of the food products that are put out there, and at the Expo we will face and discuss various topics, but amongst them one which has not been discussed before and the most important, which is the sustainability and distribution of food.
Per questo abbiamo una ambizione che è quella di poter nei prossimi anni, anche grazie alla collaborazione di importanti istituzioni come quella che oggi ci ospita o altri soggetti che insieme a noi stanno cercando di organizzare anche dal punto di vista del dibattito i temi dell'Expo. Penso al Gambero Rosso per esempio, vedo l'amico presidente Paolo Cuccia qui in sala, soggetti che si preoccupano della evoluzione della qualità del cibo e dell'originalità del cibo. Mi piacerebbe, abbiamo l'ambizione che questo sia il primo appuntamento di una serie di appuntamenti che riguarderanno il tema del cibo e dell'alimentazione di qualità, che partono da Milano ma che si ripeteranno, mi auguro, in tutto il mondo.
I would like to focus on not only the aforementioned, but also the quality of the food that we are putting out there, particularly the quality of the food that comes from Milano. I would like to recognize the dignitaries and distinguished members that are in the room today. And again, the importance of the quality is top.
Noi quindi vogliamo che Expo Milano 2015 sia la prima tappa di un lungo percorso che porti a riqualificare l'immagine dell'agricoltura moderna come soggetto che promuove il cibo di qualità, la sicurezza.
Therefore, we would like the Expo Milano 2015 to focus again on the quality of the food that we were putting out there and to really make that the centerpiece of the conference.
La sicurezza alimentare e la qualità degli alimenti per noi sono priorità.
The security, food security and quality of these products for us are priority.
Per questo motivo io vi ringrazio per l'ospitalità, ringrazio in particolare il NNAIF che ha organizzato, saluto il console, che ha organizzato che ha voluto organizzare questo evento e che ci ha riservato uno spazio importante come Regione Lombardia e un riconoscimento del quale sono fiero ed orgoglioso.
For this, I would like to thank everybody for their hospitality, in particular the consul who has reserved this time and space within everybody's day to discuss this and to showcase Lombardia within the confines or context of the conference.
Vi auguro di buon lavoro per la giornata di oggi e che questo dibattito sia proficuo nella direzione dei temi politici di cui abbiamo accennato.
In this way, I wish us all a good day of productive work and debate in which we can move forward on the topics that we've mentioned.
Ma soprattutto, come io sono stato più volte a Miami e spero di tornare presto, mi auguro di vedere tutti voi a Milano nei prossimi 6 mesi per l'Expo 2015.
But above all, since I've been to Miami other times, I not only hope to come back to Miami, but more than that, to see you all in Milan for the Expo 2015.
Il clima non è lo stesso, ma cercheremo di fare del nostro meglio con tutto il resto.
The climate is not the same, but we'll try to do our best, notwithstanding.
Grazie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fava, and thank you very much, Maria, for that translation. And now we get into the heart of today's program with our first dynamic panel discussion, Understanding the Relationship Between Food and Health. As I introduce the moderator and panelists, they will come up to the stage and take their places, and at the end of my introduction, we'll all applaud and thank them. Moderating the panel is someone else who truly needs no introduction, Linda Gassenheimer. What can we say about her? Renowned TV and radio personality, nationally syndicated columnist, best-selling author, and food consultant, and I could say several things more. And now let's introduce our panel. Dr. Camilo Ricordi, Advisory Board member of the Varela Center and Director of the University of Miami's Diabetes Research Institute. Dr. Paolo Romanelli and Dr. Robert Kirshner of the University of Miami Medical School Department of Dermatology and Cutaneous Surgery. Dr. Michael Passon, founder of the Florida Center for Allergy and Asthma Care. Dr. Timothy Harlan of the Tulane University School of Medicine. And last but not least, Dr. Antonio Giordano, Director of the Sbarro Institute at Temple University. Let's give them all a big round of applause.
Wonderful, we've got them all here. What a panel, amazing. Well, thank you very much, Juan, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you. And so we're going to talk about understanding the relationship between food and health. Now, is better food going to be our prescription for a healthier America? And what's making us sick anyway? These are the problems we're going to discuss today with this esteemed panel. So I'm going to start right away, and I'm going to say that each panelist will have around 10 minutes, and I will give them a 2-minute warning at 8 minutes. Okay, panelists? Yes? Okay, good. We want to keep on time and make sure everyone has a chance to say what they want to say. So we're going to start with Dr. Camilo Riccardi. He is the member of the advisory board of the Barilla Center for Food and Nutrition and director at the University of Miami Diabetes Research Institute. So Dr. Riccardi, question. National health is impacted by many factors, including nutrient quality, environmental factors, economic and cultural issues, sustainable diets. These are words we're going to be hearing a lot of. So can you explain the concept of sustainable diets and tell us about some of the advances that have been made in this area? And also, how are we going to get to the next level? Dr. Riccardi.
So casually, this is the topic of my PowerPoint presentation that I prepared in the last 2 seconds while the question was formulated. So first of all, I'm glad to be here from the Diabetes Research Institute at the University of Miami, where tomorrow we will host a meeting of the scientific community, Italian scientific community, with President Sergio Pecorelli from AIFA, who is the Food and Drug Administration equivalent in Italy. And I'm glad to be able to host this meeting there. Here is the challenge in a nutshell. Like, we have a dramatic increase in chronic degenerative disease condition. 1 in 3 Americans lives now with a deadly or debilitating disease condition. We have 133 million Americans with chronic or disabling disease. 1 of 2 women get cancer, 1 of 3 men get cancer, 5 million have Alzheimer's, and 23.5 million have autoimmune disease, and 40% will get diabetes. And you know that overweight and overnutrition is a major problem in our era. Here, for diabetes alone, 387 million people worldwide have diabetes, and it caused 4.9 million deaths in 2014 alone. So once every 7 seconds, 1 person dies from diabetes-related illness. The expenditures are huge, $612 billion in health expenditures, and many other factors. So prevention, diet, and lifestyle play a critical role in type 2 diabetes. Type 1 is the autoimmune disease that is unrelated to diet, but the large majority, 95%, have type 2 that is dramatically linked to diet and lifestyle, and could be prevented over 50% by appropriate diet, nutrition, and lifestyle. And why do we have this situation today of increasing degenerative disease condition, not just diabetes? Because what have been termed by Barry Sears from the Zone Diets and other as the perfect nutritional storm. So we have in the last 3 decades increasing omega-6, increasing refined carbohydrates, decreasing omega-3 consumption, and decreased polyphenols in the diet. So this brought what has been called inflammation in your blood. You have a chronic inflammation that is subclinical, is subliminal, is silent. You don't feel pain, so you don't realize you have this inflammation in your blood, but you can measure it if you measure some chemicals like arachidonics over EPA ratio and others. So this has been called as the secret killer because inflammation is behind heart attacks, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and many other degenerative disease conditions, but you don't feel it. And we don't have time to get into the details of this, but mainly what can happen, your potential of life measure if you take a surrogate marker like telomere length between age 0, birth, and age 40, if you have an inflammatory diet versus you have a non-inflammatory diet, at age 40 you may find your telomeres already decreased substantially. Then by age 40 to 70, the 70 person with inflammatory diet may find his regenerative potential and the ability to heal tissue, to fight arteriosclerosis, stroke, and other conditions decreased to 0, while the one with an anti-inflammatory diet has still potential for life, maybe up to 130, 140 years if nothing else happens. So this has been published a few months ago, December 2014, British Medical Journal, a very important study showing over 120 patients, subjects followed for 4 decades. We don't have time every time to do study that long with that many patients, but the indication is that indeed, if you stick to a Mediterranean kind of diet that is traditionally anti-inflammatory, you have longer telomeres. It's associated to longer telomeres that could be associated with longer life expectancy. Of course, if you don't have a car accident or other problem happening. So what is the burning issue for our planet and sustainable diet, as the question was asking, is that we have to address climate change, agricultural productivity, population growth, global food paradoxes, and water management, other issues. And what have been honored to be part is with the Barilla Center for Food and Nutrition Foundation, we have a transdisciplinary approach to these global paradoxes and problems. So the BCFN is an independent multidisciplinary center with the goal to provide multiple outputs and contribution with high scientific content and become over time a valuable tool for institutions, scientific community, media, and people. The flagship has been this double pyramid that is not only the food pyramid, what is good for you, but is also what is good for the planet, and showing how the dietary recommendation that are good for people, for your health, independently whether it's to prevent diabetes, cancer, or other conditions, are also environmentally friendly and good for the planet. So what are the big 3 paradoxes that we have today is that you have 850 million that suffer hunger and 1.5 billion that are overnutrited, overweight, and have excess nutrition or wrong nutrition. So approximately you have 30 million people dying every year of hunger and malnutrition, and 36 million dying every year of overnutrition or wrong nutrition. So this is the first paradox. The second paradox is that you could feed all the people that is malnourished if you would redirect part of the consumption. World grain production is only used, less than 50% is used for human consumption and nutrition. You have 33% is used to feed animals, and 7% is used for biofuels, so to feed cars. In addition, food waste is one major problem. So 1/3 of the food produced is wasted, is not consumed, all along the line of production, from production to distribution to consumption to our refrigerator at home. So in summary, all these components also point out to the fact that planet Earth is in negative balance. So right now we are consuming 1.5 planet resources, is already unsustainable, and going forward we will have 3 planets Earth needed by 2015. So we need to clearly have solution, and that's why the Milan Protocol has been crafted and has been endorsed by the Italian government, by Prime Minister Renzi recently, and has been at the base of what will be the Milan Charter that will be presented at Expo 2015, and propose objectives to achieve zero hunger and healthy lifestyles, create sustainable agriculture, and put an end to or limit food waste as much as possible. So the Milan Protocol is an international effort, is a bottom-up approach, public-private initiative, also open to business, is supported by 19 organizations, institutions, and experts, and you can please see the online platform on www.milanprotocol.com. There is an online petition, European Parliament resolution to call on the EU institution and member state to address and take action on the key Milan Protocol issues, and will be a contribution to the Milan Charter of the Italian government to be handed over Secretary General of the United Nations on October 16, 2015 at Expo in Milan. And I'd like to conclude inviting all the students and young scientists to apply and submit your idea to BCFN Yes, that is this competition international of young researchers that are invited to present their ideas on the 3 paradoxes that we briefly described within this 8-minute limit. If you submit your project, the winner, the finalist, will be invited to Milan to present their presentation at the Expo 2015. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was so much to learn and understand in such a short time. It was wonderfully presented, and thank you so much. A lot to know about, a lot to learn. Okay, well, now we're going to go to Dr. Romanelli. Dr. Camillo Romanelli is a member of the advisory board. He's from the University of Miami Medical School, Department of Dermatology and Cutaneous Surgery. Dr. Romanelli, we know that in Florida, we have a lot of skin problems due to the sun exposure. That we know. But we often ignore our skin, which is the largest organ in our body. We often ignore it when we talk about food and health. So what skin conditions can be attributed to our diets, and how can eating improve skin health? So, Dr. Romanelli?
Good morning. So definitely skin is the largest organ in our body, and that's why we thought that dermatology should have the largest representation here. And I'm very honored, privileged to be part of this panel of speakers. And definitely we think, in dermatology, we think that through the diet, the food, we can make the skin better, and we can even make the rest of the body better. So I'm from Italy. I was born in Pisa, moved to California, 1984, Loma Linda. Do you know Loma Linda? It's a Seventh-day Adventist community, and I'm not Seventh-day Adventist. I definitely respect it, but it has a lot to do with food because they're strictly vegetarian followers. Tell you a little bit more about me. I want to say my main expertise through the years in dermatology at the University of Miami since 1992 as a resident first, and then junior faculty in dermatology 2002 is psoriasis. And Dr. Ricordi talked about the inflammasome and the inflammatory cascade. So we believe that psoriasis is definitely a big part of this inflammatory picture. And we are so excited in dermatology that we think that treating psoriasis with the proper armamentarium will be able to also affect the whole inflammatory cascade, the obesity, and the other so-called comorbidities associated with the psoriasis. Okay, so psoriasis and obesity, why not treating is not an option. And as I said, treating means also working on the inflammatory cascade. And as you can see here, by chance, I want to say, but I became the director, in 2005, I became the director of the so-called Jackson Memorial Hospital, University of Miami, Psoriasis Biologics Clinic, which is the only clinic as such in America. And few words about the obesity epidemic. More than 1/3 of Americans, adults, are obese, 78.6 million, and a lot of related medical conditions, as we know, cardiovascular disease, stroke, I go from here, right? Yeah. Type 2 diabetes, Dr. Ricordi is one of the giants in this, and incredible amount of cost. And you can see the shift on the percent of obese patients in America in different states. Now, psoriasis as well is quite common, and as we mentioned, is a chronic inflammatory disease, 2.6% of the American population, and it is not the millions for obesity, but still quite a few, 5.8 to 7.5 million Americans diagnosed with psoriasis, and again, associated with so-called comorbidities such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. And you can see in the pointer, in the vignette there, with all the inflammatory cytokines that we think are involved with the inflammation, like TNF-alpha, interleukin-6, and also involved in psoriasis, and at the end, they may cause major cardiovascular catastrophic event. So this is our clinic, the Jackson Memorial Hospital, University of Miami Biologic Psoriasis Clinic, where we now have more than 360 patients. And this clinic was acknowledged in a commentary in our most prestigious journal for dermatology in America, Journal of American Academy of Dermatology, in January, the commentary about this clinic, an article that we put together, was published and created some interesting comments. So this is psoriasis. These are the patients we see in this clinic, and you see pretty serious condition, but these are also some patients we see there in our clinic. These are patients that have psoriasis and absolutely overweight. So we think that the proper diet, the proper food, and the proper treatment for this condition, we will be able to make the patients better as far as the skin and make the patients better as far as the whole inflammatory cascade. This is another picture just taken a few weeks ago in our clinic, and you see the classic features of psoriasis with these well-demarcated red, scaly, micaceous papules and plaques, and then definitely you can tell from this picture that the patient is overweight. So again, a strong relationship between diet, food, and psoriasis, with a twofold increased risk for psoriasis in the obese, and BMI is body mass index. So you can read by yourself, 9% higher risk for psoriasis onset, increased risk for psoriasis area severity index, which we call PASI, and increased BMI. And here, the chemical relationship between inflammatory cells, you see on my left, lymphocytes and adipocytes, eosinophils, all the cytokines produced, and on the other side, again, the relationship between adipocytes and inflammatory cells in both psoriasis, obesity, comorbidities. And according to this article, psoriasis cytokines, interleukin-17 and interleukin-23, have been found to be elevated in obese women compared to lean women. So strong association. So body mass index greater than 30 kilogram per meter square may potentially play a role in patients' abilities to achieve the full therapeutic effect on psoriasis therapy. And again here, with the body mass index, the waist circumference, the waist to hip ratio, you see the strong relationship between food, diet, obesity, psoriasis, and I want to add inflammation, inflammasome, cytokines, and at the end, unfortunately, a major cardiovascular event. And this was acknowledged in some of the articles in the literature. This is from the Archives of Dermatology, Impact of Obesity and Smoking on Psoriasis Presentation and Management. And the conclusion of this article was that patients with psoriasis were more likely to be obese and to smoke compared to non-psoriatic patients. And even serum lipid levels in psoriasis are elevated. Total cholesterol and the so-called bad cholesterol, the LDL, are elevated in patients with psoriasis. So through proper diet, and I want to also emphasize proper treatment, we can make these patients better, both internally with the damaged adipocytes and externally with the appearance of the skin. And a low-calorie diet, hypocaloric diet of 800 to 1,000 calories per day could definitely improve, again, both avenues, the psoriasis and the obesity, which are pretty much absolutely related. So psoriasis is definitely right now became cardiovascular risk factor. So we think in dermatology we have this major responsibility to recognize these patients with psoriasis, to know very well that psoriasis is associated with potential myocardial infarction and cardiovascular catastrophic events. And we need to treat this patient to improve everything, not just the skin. And this is the pivotal article in JAMA from Dr. Gelfand, showing first the association between myocardial infarction and psoriasis. And then in this other article, impact of psoriasis treatment on cardiovascular risk factor, we see that if we properly treat psoriasis, if the patients have a proper diet, all the inflammatory markers improve, such as CRP, ESR, and also the hemoglobin A1C so dear to Dr. Ricordi. But this is me 2 weeks ago at the microscope in my office, looking at slides. And you can see here there is an cord for my keys. I'm a, let's say, strong Inter fan. But looking at the microscope, we can do even further, because this is a cartoon of the skin with the hyperkeratotic plaque on top, the epidermis, and you see these little dots. This is called TNF-alpha, tumor necrosis factor alpha. And in pathology, with a special study with so-called immunohistochemistry, we can identify this tumor necrosis factor alpha, which you can see here with this brown, I want to say positive cells and skin fibers. And we can make these patients better. This is one of my patients at the clinic, and you see a little overweight and these major plaques of psoriasis. He came first time in July 2007. We treat him with an anti-TNF-alpha inhibitor, and then he dramatically improved. And this is the biopsy from this patient for dermatopathologist. This is a classic, on the left is a classic picture of psoriasis with the psoriasiform hyperplasia and some other features, no granular layer. I don't want to go too much into the details, but on the other side, again, you see this brown, looks like pigment, but it's not. This is one of the major inflammatory cytokines called TNF-alpha, and we block that, and we think that's why the patient did so well. And this, we also did it on the heart. This is a major study we're doing with a medical examiner of post-mortem cases, patients that died of myocardial infarction and also had psoriasis. So we stained the myocardium with the TNF-alpha, and we saw the same results. So our goal is to treat, this is another of our patients, to treat this patient with psoriasis and not only improve the skin, but also improve their weight. And this is a before and after picture. And now we're at the end, and you'll, through this wonderful meeting, you will hear a lot of good things about food, but I want to end with a little joke, if you let me. So I want to tell you the truth about the food. So the Japanese eat very little fat and suffer fewer heart attacks than the British and the Americans. You agree with that? The French eat a lot of fat and suffer fewer heart attacks than the British and Americans. The Chinese drink, they don't have the enzyme apparently, so they drink very little red wine and suffer fewer heart attacks than the British and the Americans. Now the Italians, and there are quite a few here, I hope you confirm this, drink excessive amounts of red wine and also suffer fewer heart attacks than the British and Americans. So the conclusion is, eat and drink what you like. It's speaking English that kills you. Thank you for your attention.
Well, you've got your answer right there. Enjoy life. Thank you very much. And now we have another dermatologist, Dr. Kirchner, and he is also at the University of Miami Diabetes Research Institute. He's going to talk more about skin and our health and our diet.
Okay. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about food and health, food and skin. And what I hope to do in the next 8 minutes or so is just give you 3 or 4 stories about food and skin, because obviously there's lots of potential stories we could cover, and we don't have the time to do it. We do hail from just about 2 miles west of here at the Medical Center at the University of Miami, which is, that picture is just kind of a small part of it, and you can see how big the Medical Center is. In fact, it's considered now the largest medical center in the country. It's the top 50 medical school and the top 40 university. And our department is quite renowned. We're a top 10 dermatology department, and by dermatology standards, we're relatively large with over 20 faculty and residents and over 10 fellows. So I want to tell you some of those stories I was alluding to, and I want to start with how we all start our day. Who here drank coffee this morning? Okay, well, good for you, good for you. You might have drank coffee because you feel like you need it to get your day off right. But if you look at the Miami Herald just from 2 days ago, there was an article about coffee, a health food. right? And in this article, it highlighted one of the benefits of coffee, which didn't have to do with the skin. It highlighted the cardiovascular or vascular effects of drinking coffee. But we also know that it seems that there's a skin effect of drinking coffee as well, because it appears that coffee protects against the development of skin cancer. Skin cancer is quite common. In fact, there's more skin cancers than all other cancers combined. This is the most common of the skin cancers, which is called the basal cell carcinoma. It's the most common skin cancer. It's the most common cancer overall. In fact, if we divided this room up into fifths, we could say that 1/5 of you, 1/5 of Americans, will get a skin cancer during their life. It's that common. And there's data now that if you drink coffee, caffeinated coffee appears as opposed to decaffeinated coffee. Sorry about that if you drink decaffeinated coffee. You'll actually have a protective effect from developing skin cancer. Now, you may not have heard of basal cell carcinoma, although it's very common and you should have, but the deadliest of the common skin cancers is melanoma. It's in the top 10 of all cancers. It's the 5th most common cancer in men and the 7th in women, and nearly 80,000 people will develop melanoma in the United States this year. And similar to basal cell carcinoma, coffee has a protective effect for development of this cancer. And here are some high-profile articles in the New England Journal of Medicine recently looking at the association of coffee, not just on skin cancer, but cancers and many different diseases. And also specifically an article here looking at the increased caffeine intake associated with coffee drinking reduces the risk of basal cell carcinoma of the skin. So you got your morning off to a great start, everyone. You drank coffee, but use sunscreen also. With regard to sun and sunscreen, obviously we do know that the sun is the major risk factor for skin cancer development in susceptible individuals, but there are other ways to prevent skin cancer as well. It appears that beta-carotene may have a protective effect against skin damage. Some people have diseases that make them very sensitive to the light. You may have heard of conditions like lupus. Well, it turns out that beta-carotene can protect people from the sun damage associated with lupus. What is beta-carotene? Well, you can take it in supplements, but you can also get it through food, and very commonly get it through food. The most famous food of beta-carotene is the carrot. And what it does is it reduces free radical formation, and it treats diseases that are either elicited or worsened by sunlight. In fact, it's suggested if you're going to go to a place on vacation, a sunny climate, you take a short course of beta-carotene to protect yourself from the damage the sun can do. So if you're on vacation, whether it's in Milan and you're going out in the sun or Miami, you may want to increase your consumption of some of these foods that are high in carotene. I showed you a carrot earlier, but sweet potatoes, here's a picture of spinach, a whole host of different foods have beta-carotene in it. And this is in a descending order. The second story I want to tell you about is acne, because there's been a feeling that acne and food have been linked. And if many people with acne say, oh, pizza makes my face worse, or something like that. Well, for a long time, and acne is common. This is the spectrum of acne, somebody with mild acne, somebody with severe acne. Almost everybody gets some form of acne, and most of us, it goes away in our teens or in our 20s, but there are some people who acne persists into their 40s. One of the foods that's been associated with acne has been chocolate. But interestingly, about 30 years ago, chocolate was studied and found not to be associated with acne in well-done trials. But what was interesting is that the chocolate that was used in those studies was dark chocolate. And now there's evolving information that the milk chocolate, as opposed to the dark chocolate, that can worsen acne. And new studies have suggested the milk part, the milk chocolate, is the part of that. Now I'm going to go from chocolate and talk about two different tribes, one in Paraguay and the other in New Guinea, that have very low incidence of acne. I told you 85% of Americans have acne, but in these two tribes they have almost no acne. And the question is it genetics or is it environment? Well, looking at the diets of these people, it's thought that it actually is related to their diet, because their diet has low glycemic loads. And low glycemic loads has them lose weight, It's related to an insulin-like growth factor binding protein, which is linked to acne and increased with milk. So these people who have a low glycemic diet have less of this protein and have less acne, and this protein is related to milk. A number of studies, recently large studies, have suggested that milk is associated with acne. So people that drink milk have a higher risk of developing more and severe acne. I just want to tell a couple other stories. One is about gluten. Gluten's all the rage now, right? And people are attributing everything to gluten, gluten-free this and gluten-free that. And it turns out that for many people it's helpful. But really there's one major disease in dermatology that's associated with gluten-sensitive enteropathy. It's a condition called dermatitis herpetiformis, which is associated with celiac disease. And this is an immune-mediated blistering disease that's highly correlated with celiac disease. And one of the very important things about this is that you don't have to use any medications to treat this. You can use medications, but you can also just use diet to improve this. So if you have this very severe case of this dermatitis herpetiformis, which gives little blisters on the elbows and knees, you can change your diet. Go to a strict gluten-free diet and the disease will go away. Now there are other diseases that have been associated with gluten, for example, atopic dermatitis and vitiligo, but their relationship is much less than this condition, this dermatitis herpetiformis. Psoriasis we heard about just a few minutes ago. Dr. Romanelli gave us a very lovely lecture about it. It is beginning to be linked to gluten sensitivity as well. And so some people with psoriasis may benefit from a low gluten diet. Now there are other conditions, other blistering diseases. This is one called pemphigus vulgaris, where if you don't treat it, you can die. So the choice is not to treat this person, or you would not treat this person, but there are things in the diet, such as garlic and mustards, mangoes, pistachios, that can make this person worse. And most dermatologists don't even appreciate that there's a role of food in this immunologic condition that has a very high mortality. And then finally, I just want to touch upon diabetes and wounds because they're very prevalent. In fact, the wounds from these patients with diabetes have a higher incidence of death than many cancers, and they're very common. 6 million Americans have wounds each year. And the point I want to make with this story between wounds and food, and diabetic wounds and food, is that as the disease gets worse, even if there's not an association between the disease and the wound, as the wound gets worse, patients' nutrition gets worse. So the key is that as people get sicker, they need to pay more attention to their nutrition because there's an association between severity of disease and their worsening nutritional status. And if you supplement their nutrition, you can improve their disease because of this fact. So what I try to do here was to tell you that yes, food is the spice of life, but it also has other things. It may help prevent, worsen, or cause disease, and the right food for the right people can improve their health and their quality of their life. And I want to thank you for allowing me to present to you.
So this is wonderful. You can have your coffee and your chocolate as long as you eat carrots, right? Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to go on to Dr. Passon. Dr. Michael Passon is an allergy and immunology specialist and the founder of the Florida Center for Allergy and Asthma Care. Dr. Passon, we see so many children with allergies these days. I'm sure some of you must have no children with allergies. And recent studies released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention show that food allergies among children increased about 50% in the last 20 years. That's a lot. So what do you think is causing this increase, and what can we do about it? Dr. Passon.
Thank you for having me here for this conference. It's nice to see a big crowd. Actually, the title of my talk was called Chew on This for 8 minutes, and I was thrilled to know that we could extend it another 2 minutes, so now you can chew on this for 10 minutes. Can I have a show of hands of who suspects they're allergic to foods? Let's see what percentage of people here. Okay, we only have a few hands. Well, when most studies are conducted where people are just asked to see if they are allergic to foods, around 12 or 13% of people suspect they're allergic to foods. When more traditional medically oriented studies are done in adults, it's really found that really only 3 or 4% of people are allergic to foods. In children, it's a little bit higher. It's more like about 5%. Linda just alluded to a 50% increase in the last 20 years. Actually, the most recent literature shows a much greater increase in allergies. We're talking about a 100% increase in the last 10 years, and even a 200% increase in allergy to peanut, which has all made the news, and that's the new rage, is peanut allergy. There was a press release from the European Academy of Allergy and Clinical Immunology, which states that food allergies have doubled in the last 10 years, and that admissions to the hospital for severe allergic reactions, those which we title as anaphylactic, and anaphylactic means that they have had a real breakdown in their immune system. It affects their blood pressure, it affects their skin, it affects their ability to breathe, and those people end up in the emergency rooms and must be treated very, very quickly. I alluded to peanut allergy. I just wanted to mention to you, everybody has an idea what are the most common foods that cause allergies, just so you get it from, was going to say the horse's mouth, but let's say my mouth. Milk, eggs, wheat, fish, shellfish, and fish and shellfish are completely different. Peanuts, tree nuts, again, peanuts are legumes, they're vegetables. They are not nuts, that's just a name, peanuts. And of course, the tree nuts represent all of the other nuts that are out there. But getting back to peanuts, it was all in the news this week. Big study done in the New England Journal of Medicine, breaking the myth that every parent has, and I'm an allergist, I see these parents every day in the office. I'm not giving my kid peanuts. All these kids in school have peanut allergy, and they're bringing in their EpiPens and wanting to have no peanut butter sandwiches at lunch. Well, this study was extremely interesting. And before I tell you about the results of the study, if you haven't really read them already, could I get a show of hands of people who have heard of the hygiene hypothesis? Anybody heard of that? Oh, good. People really do. This is something that came out a while ago, and this was done around the time that the wall came down between East and West Germany. And they found that the kids in East Germany who had much poorer hygiene than the kids in West Germany had much less allergy. So keep that in mind. Better hygiene, more allergy. Now, this study that was done, and it was called the LEAP study on peanuts, showed, again, the opposite of what you would think. The kids that ate peanuts right from, well, I don't want to say birth, and it doesn't have to be peanuts, it could be peanut butter. The kids who had eaten peanuts, when they started taking polls of kids who are allergic to peanuts, they found that the ones who ate all the peanuts had less allergy to peanuts than the ones whose parents had kept them off of peanuts. So that's quite an amazing discovery. So really, I as an allergist have been doing it all wrong for 40 years. And I have seen this increase that I spoke about at the beginning of my talk of increase of patients with allergies. Now the question is, how do we treat this problem? Well, number one, of course, and the most important is education. So we are going to gradually be talking to our patients about not being afraid to give kids foods. Now, if a child does have eczema, as alluded to by the dermatologist, you need to be a little bit more careful because many foods, especially in young children, can lead to eczema. There was another, maybe less publicized study about treating people for peanut allergy. Someone, and I'm not sure exactly where this was done, they have developed a patch for peanuts, and they wear a patch and they slowly get desensitized to peanuts. This is new, it's experimental, don't try it at home. And another one not to try at home is oral, via the mouth, oral desensitization to peanuts. There is a wonderful allergist out at Stanford University she made the cover of New York Times Magazine, so she must really know what she's doing. She is feeding children multiple foods that they're allergic to orally in just minute amounts, and she is doing very well. But again, even I as an allergist, I'm not about to try this until this is something that is really widespread and we're certain that it's going to work. Now, the other thing that we can do is make sure that every patient who has an allergy to peanuts has what we call epinephrine auto-injectors. There's 2 of them. Everybody knows about EpiPens, and these have been around for years, and I'm going to come back to this in just a minute on how we use them. There's a new one called an AviQ, much smaller, and the men take to it much better. And the reason I say take to it is for many, many years, everybody gets 2 EpiPens, they put one at home, one at school. That ain't the way it works. They have 2 of them because you need 2 of them. So we make sure now that they have 2 at home and 2 at school, and make sure they carry it with them. The reason you want to have 2 EpiPens is because if you inject yourself, and I said it's an auto-injector, and it's very simple, you just take off the top and then just press it against your thigh through the clothing, it injects a dose of epinephrine. If you've done this injection and it doesn't work in 5 minutes or so, you need to inject a second injection. Very, very important. I still see pediatricians and primary care doctors prescribing 1 EpiPen or telling the patient to put 1 at school and 1 at home. So we're constantly re-educating the patients. The other reason you need 2 is if you're far away from medical care, you may use the EpiPen, it may work, but it wears off. It may wear off in 30 minutes. So if you're out hiking in the Everglades or out on a boat and can't get into Mercy Hospital, which is usually the closest emergency room by boat, you go ahead and use the second one. So these are very, very important. And I'll bring myself back to what I said initially of how we prevent this. It's all about education. We know if a patient is allergic to peanuts and they've had a severe reaction, we have to really educate them. It's a good idea if they like I had yesterday, 1 child in the family is allergic to peanuts and the other one is not. I advise the parents to have no peanuts in the house. So that is very important. One more thing about the EpiPen and the AviQ is that after you use it, you're not out of the woods yet. You must either call 911 or you must go to an emergency room. Don't go to your doctor's office and sit in the waiting room. I mean, people have died doing that. So this is all very important. I'm done, and I hope you all understand where peanut allergy and all food allergy has increased over the last few years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Passon, and some sobering information there. Why are we getting so many allergies and what's happening? I suppose we need a lot more research done there. And now we're going to go to Dr. Timothy Harlan. He's the assistant professor of medicine and cardiology from Tulane University School of Medicine. Now, Dr. Harlan, man after my own heart, because you started off in the food business. And he's a cardiologist who loves to cook. He was in the food business. So you really understand what people eat and what people want to eat. And we're bombarded, especially media, we're bombarded constantly about eat this, don't eat that. It's constantly changing. You know, what's the situation here? So, Dr. Harlan, help us out. What are some practical steps that we can do to make the right choices to fit our fast-paced world? Dr. Harlan.
So for those of you who are not physicians or not in the healthcare business, my first 4 colleagues have been speaking. You've gotten a 1-hour snapshot of what medical school is like, or at least the first 2 years of medical school, except we do this for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 2 years. Now in that, we don't get the amount of food or nutrition information that you've gotten today. We may not even get as much as you have gotten today in the first 2 years of medical school. The Institute of Medicine and the Association of American Medical Colleges recommends 25 hours of nutrition, quote, education for medical students sometime during their 4 years of medical school. It doesn't happen. Only about 27% of medical schools actually get to that 25 hours, and of those schools that do offer nutrition, it's only about 17 hours on average in the 140, 150 medical schools. So in that context, I'm going to tell you a little bit different story about what we do at Tulane and about food and what you might be able to think about for yourself. About 4.5 years ago, my dean, a fellow by the name of Ben Sachs, came to a group of us and said he wanted to build a teaching kitchen to teach medical students how to cook. Now, you know, that seems like a really nice idea, and I do come from a background in food. I am not a cardiologist, by the way. I'm an internist. I was a chef before I became a physician, so he invited me to this team. And you know, at first I had trouble getting my arms around this. I've been writing for the lay public for about 25 years. Started writing, wrote my first book while I was in medical school. I've been writing cookbooks since then. And it wasn't until we decided to put this teaching kitchen out in the community that I became really excited about this, that we would not only teach physicians in training how to cook and how to think about food differently, but we would also be able to use that to teach our patients and the community in New Orleans. And, you know, the interesting thing about New Orleans is, you know, southern Louisiana and Louisiana we kind of vie for the most obese state in the nation. You know, between us and Alabama and Mississippi, we sort of trade those places year on year. And when you stop and think about that piece, but also the piece that we live in New Orleans in the most Mediterranean city in the Western Hemisphere. If you stop and think about Mediterranean diet, which is the foundation of our curriculum, when you think about Mediterranean diet, you think of Italy and France and Spain and Greece, and you think about recipes, but in truth of fact, the Mediterranean diet in and of itself really doesn't have anything to do with those recipes. It's just a foundation for how to think about eating. And that foundation is pretty simple. It's 9 basic principles, 9-point Mediterranean diet score, which is used in the research that y'all mentioned earlier. That 9-point Mediterranean diet score is really easy. More vegetables, more legumes, more fruits and nuts, more fish, but less than you think, only about 2 servings or so a week or more. Less meat, but not no meat, okay? Leaner meats and less meat. Less dairy, mostly fermented and processed dairy like yogurts and cheeses, etc. quality oils, very important, you think of olive oil, but it's not really about olive oil. Butter is not bad for you. It's the ratio of olive oil to butter or saturated to unsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, and alcohol in moderation. And so we use those 9-point Mediterranean diet score in all of the foundation of our programming. And the interesting thing is, if you improve your Mediterranean diet score by 2 points, let's say you get more whole grains, which I forgot to mention, more whole grains and more legumes. You just ramp up the whole grains and legumes. You get 2 extra points on the Mediterranean diet score. You have reduced your risk of all-cause mortality by 25%. All-cause mortality, heart attack, cancer, very simple, small changes. Obesity is a big issue in America, and what we do at our teaching kitchen with our medical students in our community, we really don't focus on weight loss. We focus on the quality of calories that our physicians, our medical students, and our community are consuming, and we use that Mediterranean diet literature to teach them, and we translate those Mediterranean diet principles for the community to the American kitchen. So what have we done? In the last 3.5 years, we have built an 8-module series for medical students. These are first and second year medical students. This is an elective, although this year that 8-module series, which each module is 3 hours, so they're getting the 25 hours that's recommended. This year, we're fully integrating that into the curriculum with 1 module, and we'll begin adding 1 module every year. So over the course of the next 4 years, our medical students will get a full 25 hours, and we'll continue to offer the elective. And in the 3rd and 4th year, we offer disease-specific or condition-specific. We actually have a dermatology module. We have an allergy module that we're developing this month. We've got a module on celiac disease, a module on hypertension. And what we do is we take what y'all have heard today, this kind of basic science that we learn in the first 2 years of medical school. All of the monounsaturated fats and tumor necrosis factor and all of the chemistry, all of the physiology, all of the biochemistry, metabolism, and we package that up and we translate that into the conversation that our medical students and future physicians are going to have with their patients in the examination room about food. Not about monounsaturated fats, not about carbohydrates, or even glycemic index, because our patients don't go to the grocery store with a shopping list that says 1 bottle monounsaturated fat, 1 pound lean protein, or 1 cup complex carbohydrates. They go and they buy olive oil, and they buy avocados, and we buy halibut, and we buy chickpeas, and we buy food. And so we're able to really help our physicians understand how they can have a short 2-minute conversation with their patients that can really dramatically change their lives. If you go back to that 2-point Mediterranean diet score, if I told all of you who might, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, go and have fast food or eat in the school cafeteria, have a hamburger, have a sub sandwich that you think is healthy because it says that it's made fresh. If I tell you to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on whole wheat bread every day for lunch, I have just reduced your all-cause mortality by 25%. Very simple key messages that we teach our medical students. And the cool part of this is that we've developed a 12-module series for our community where our medical students, through their service learning programs, become the force multiplier. We are now running 5 community classes a week. By the end of this academic year, we will be running a community cooking class every single day of the year in New Orleans that our medical students teach. So they get to learn this, and right away they get to go and teach. So we call this translational nutrition. We're translating what you've heard today to the practical application for our future physicians, our practicing physicians, as well as our community. I'll close out and tell you we have very quickly our 5 core goals. I have 1 minute. I have 2 minutes. Well, my clock is off. We have 5 key goals for our center, for the Gold Ring Center for Culinary Medicine. The first is our medical students. I've told you about that curriculum. The second is the community and the force multiplier that our students have for that community. The third is our relationship with culinary schools. We have a very tight relationship with Johnson & Wales. We host their culinary nutrition interns, and we have started having nutrition interns and culinary interns come from other culinary schools for 11-week externships to learn about this. It's really important that we help future culinarians understand how they can change the way that their patrons are eating and dining. We have our 4th main goal is continuing medical education. We have a very robust program for continuing medical education and are developing a certificate for physicians as well as dietitians so that they will be certified culinary medicine specialists. And our last piece of this is the research piece. You've heard a lot about research. We are evidence-based physicians, make no mistake. This is not alternative medicine. This is not complementary medicine. This is evidence-based Western-style medicine, and we're applying those same outcomes research principles. We want to know that we're having an impact on our medical students, our community, the practicing physicians, culinarians, et cetera, that this is changing the way they think about food as well as changing their health outcomes. We have very good data now, for instance, on our medical students. The students who come through our program are dramatically more prepared, between 3 and 8 times more prepared to discuss these concepts with their patients. I'm going to close there. Thank you for inviting me. Come visit us in New Orleans.
Thank you, Dr. Harlan. Imagine doctors who cook and they're being taught how to cook. And of course, he's in New Orleans, a wonderful place to eat. All right. The doctors have been so wonderful time-wise that we will have a chance for questions. So if you have, start thinking about them now. As we go to our final speaker today, and that's Dr. Antonio Giordano. He's the director and professor of the Sabaro Institute for Cancer Research and Molecular Medicine at Temple University. So, Doctor.
Hi.
Your work in cancer and diabetes and cardiovascular disease, these diseases are rising amongst the younger generation of Americans, despite all the information that's out there, how to treat and prevent these illnesses. So how can we reach and educate this age group, and what innovative forms of education can be used to actually reach them? So thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought Florida would have been warm, but my gosh, it's worse than Philadelphia and New York. It's freezing cold in this room
we
here.
distribute blankets for the panel.
Anyway, but Dr. Ricordi has a warm blood. I mean, even though he's from Milan. I mean, it's, I'm from Naples, so even worse. So let me tell you just briefly about our work. I deal with cancer since my studies and my interest since I was a student. And the cancer really groups all a series of factors. I mean, it is a disease that is pretty much difficult to understand where the enemy comes from. But the research really did a lot. So has been done a great amount of progress in the years to prevent, detect, diagnose cancer. But there are more than 200 diseases that we can call cancer. However, in this slide you can see in the work that was done and we cooperate with my group, with the American Association of Cancer Research, so basically with the several groups all over the world in which we are involved. We have that this cancer continue to increase years after year. And the number of Americans receiving a cancer diagnosis each year has been increasing steadily for the past 4 decades. And this number is expected to rise significantly to 4 million in 2035. That's the last number that was generated also with our institute and several other groups in the United States. So most of cancer occur at the age of 65. That's why also we have a better, longer life. There are diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease that because of the increase of the fantastic research has been done, they are more controllable so than before. And the USA population is expected to double by 2060. Now, why it is important? We tackle cancer from different point of view. We study at the genetic level because the roots of cancer, disease in general, lie in our genes. So this is one our major strength to identify the genes that are susceptible in several patients, and they are able to trigger cancer or other disease. But of course, we are trying to understand how we can avoid these genes that are weaker in some population can be tackled by different factors. So the first thing that we should do, we should eliminate whatever really is triggering these tumors. And environment is important, environment and lifestyle. This work that we did in trying to understand which one are the factors in the environment was a major work that we did also in Italy, but also there are many areas also in the United States that the problem of toxic waste, for instance, is one of the factors in triggering cancer. We did an important study on the so-called metabolic syndrome. The metabolic syndrome is obesity, is a condition that is underlying metabolic syndrome. And you have to consider several factors: abdominal obesity, elevated blood pressure, elevating fasting plasma glucose, high serum triglycerides, low high density cholesterol levels. And this metabolic syndrome is correlated with each one of that. You need 3 at least of these factors that are off, that really you can have a link with tumorigenesis, so with cancer. And that's a study that was done by us, by our group, in the last 7-8 years on a study where we monitor over 1,000 patients. And in this in particular, you can see it is a cohort of 777 women that metabolic syndrome, and in particular, insulin resistance, abdominal fat are the risk factor for developing breast cancer after menopause. So we have a clear understanding, and now this population of patients that we recruited double it. So we are coordinating a major international study to show the how if you have basically this value, okay, you can have a worse opportunity, okay, to get cancer. Now, this study that we gave also a contribution is a complex interplay among risk factors. Just look at that, some of them. You can see that you have behavioral, physical. You can see that social factors. You can see behavioral factor and the biological component. So all these several factors. That's why cancer is called a multifactorial disease. So when the problem doesn't come because there is one damage, but several of them. So you can see that from this, there are several situations that can occur, and then when they go awry, so there's something that goes really wrong, you have developed this. This model is works also for other cancer, colorectal cancer, gastric cancer. That's an example of how you can see that the breast cancer incidence occur if you have the sum of these factors that are simultaneously damaged in a group of patients. Now, Mediterranean diets. Mediterranean diets, so is the food. We talk about environment, we talk about also some other problem, and it's clear that the Mediterranean diets, I don't want to go, I will go fast on this because there were some of the speakers already mentioned extensively this, but you can see the Mediterranean diets, and fortunately we can see most of these, some of these components of the Mediterranean diets are also in my original region, Campania. So, and it is a study that we did. This can be of interest on a tomato. The tomato is the second most consumed fresh vegetable in the Mediterranean diet. It's a good source of potassium, folate, vitamin A, C, and E. And also contain polyphenols like beta-carotene and lycopene. And there is antioxidant properties of lycopene. This we knew about that. But what we did is something more. We know the genes that really control our cell. So they're able to control our cell, the function of the cell, that's the organ in this. And we tested two of these tomatoes, San Marzano and Corbarino, that they grow close to the Vesuvio in Naples. The same work we are doing also growing the seeds coming from that area in Florida and in New York to see if the environment is able to change the properties, so the quality of this. And what you will see is something really amazing. You can see that we are able to cultivate cancer cell in vitro. You can see on the bottom left, you can find the cancer cell here. When you challenge with the extract of this tomato, you are able to block the growth of the cell in vitro. We did this study also in animal study. We are starting a major clinical trial also in individual in patient. So basically, these tomatoes has a high content of lycopene and beta-carotene that is highly preventative for developing gastric carcinoma. And finally, I want to tell about the strategy. We are currently use also technology in an approach based using virtual reality. Virtual reality not only to play video game, but to promote weight loss behavior. And we did a study in our institute and with 128 overweight women. Actually, this one was the first study done in the world using this technology. And most of them are tried to lose weight and never use a virtual reality game. And so what we did, we created video showing an avatar in a variety of different situations, such as walking on treadmill, navigating a cart through the aisle of a grocery store. And the results of pilot study on 8 women, and we reached already 85 patients now, but this was the first study, showed that watching their avatar in the virtual world made more likely women to practice those skills in real life. And the virtual model was the key of helping these women for following healthy behavior into manageable steps. Last slide is just to show some of the virtual reality scenario. And this is just a video in which of course, there are like several individuals. There are psychologists, oncologists, diabetologists, cardiologists involved in designing the software. Actually, for this, not something I'm simplifying like these few slides here. So if we can go with just the video, just a few seconds. It's not. You can see that. You can see the example, okay, of how we are taking advantage of technology also to instruct or to educate, okay, people suffering. And we are doing the same technology applying even the psycho-oncology, patient going under chemotherapy, that they feel less the pain and basically the problem of chemotherapy gives, okay, by basically helping them in taking up this tough type of therapy. Okay, that's an example of how, for instance, the avatar that reflects as a person, sometimes design avatar of themselves really, they really go into the grocery store, they know what to choose. And some of this now is applied also for patients with neuro AIDS, that basically they are unable to really recognize even the food that they should eat. Okay, so that's this technology that we develop is applying almost in several areas of medicine. Thank you very much.
very much to all of these doctors, and they all kept on time. Isn't that wonderful? So I want to take a few minutes to open this to questions, and perhaps even the doctors have questions amongst themselves they might want to ask. Are there any questions here?
Is there any role in allergic reactions to, or any involvement with hand sanitizers and allergies? I know you had mentioned the hygiene factor, so that made me think about how prevalent hand sanitizers have become.
The only problem we've seen with the hand sanitizers are some people who are allergic, the odors, the sharp odors of the hand sanitizers set off their allergies, but it's just an irritant reaction. We haven't seen any other types of allergic reactions.
Any other questions? Yes.
The impact that they have on nutrition and quality of health?
Genetically modified organisms. Anyone?
Well, actually, this one is a very tricky area, okay, because the problem is that by modifying a product, like tomatoes, okay, sometimes is seen that genetically you are unable to really reproduce the property, okay, that naturally occur in that type of vegetables, okay, during the, sometimes there are allergy or there are some type of reaction that is OGM can give in individual, and more are occurring, are happening this type of problematic. I'm sure that there are some unexplainable situations. The problem here is the major investment that has been done in developing this very, anyway, interesting technology, because you can use this even to use as a delivery system for vaccination in the poor country. That's actually very interesting. So you can carry on genes that are lacking in some population, or you can do. But on the, I really, this is like a personal opinion, because sometimes every scientist thinks that his own science is the best, okay? And I think it's a fascinating technology as a geneticist, that I know is fascinating technology, but needs a better monitor on the effect they can have on human health. And there are several examples that show that some of these OGM could create problem in healthy life. I mean, that's.
Yes, I think it's a very complex topic, but to me it's like talking about nuclear energy. Depending how you use it, it could be devastating or maybe positive. And you can use OGM, like in a way, is a way to do precision intervention to modify what you want to modify. But you can modify to increase resistance to pesticides and then bombard with tons of pesticides to improve profit, or you can do it to induce vitamin A in rice or other. So it's a very difficult, it's a little like when we talk about Mediterranean diet is good, but then you go in some cheap chains and you have a salad with vegetable refined oils that contain 75% linoleic acid, that is a precursor of arachidonic acids and the pro-inflammatory cascade. So depending how you cook, you can transform a Mediterranean diet that is good and healthy in something that is much less healthy.
Thank you. Any other questions? We have time for another question. Sorry, in the back.
To continue on the topic of cooked food, I'm a chef and been pondering the actually process of cooking food. We all know that chicken soup is the penicillin. Why? I've asked doctors, and they told me, of course, it's a cauldron of amino acids. So so when you take them in and you're sick, it helps you restore and rebuild. Tomatoes, you cook tomatoes, the acids are easier absorbed if the tomato is cooked. We know that as primates, what makes us different is that we cook our food versus our predecessors. So all of you have addressed the Mediterranean diet and food, but what does the role of actually cooking food have or is in this state of well-being and this cognizance of eating well?
Gentlemen, thank you.
You mean the cooked food, you mean, right? Let's talk about the only experience we have with tomatoes. Okay?
Lycopene, yeah.
So we are checking how cooked tomatoes lose or gain some properties. That's some of the study that we are doing and there is a certain cooking timing, okay, that makes the content of lycopene less effective in blocking a cancer cell, for instance. Okay, so that is one of the things that we are discovering. Okay, so now we don't know precisely if we can tell one day you can cook the tomato like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or 15 minutes, but we reach the point to know the dosage or the type of timing to see if they lose some of the original properties. Okay,
I think we have Dr. Manelli and then Dr. Payson. Others
Yes,
want to speak to it.
I think you hit a very important topic, because besides the quality of the food that you use, the way you cook it is critically important for the effect that you have on health. And to give very simple example, like the way you cook pasta, if you cook it like in America, macaroni and cheese, overcooked, has a much higher glycemic index than if you take a pasta that is al dente and properly cooked for our standards. And, and also the temperature of cooking. If you cook with oil, or even if you have fried food that is not dramatically suggested, but the temperature of frying to avoid the overheating when you cook aliments is important. And also how you mix, if I may, when you cook, like for example, if you have a slice of whole wheat bread in the morning toasted and you add extra virgin olive oils, you decrease the glycemic index of the overall consumption, so that the way you combine food and the way you cook it is critically important.
Dr. Passon and
yes.
then Dr. Harlan. Yes?
Something else related to allergy and cooking we didn't talk about is sometimes the antigenicity or the allerginess, to put it in more lay terms, is altered by cooking. And I'll use my gorgeous wife here as an example. She can't eat raw bananas. She's very allergic. But if you cook them, it changes the protein, and she can now eat bananas.
I think for my money, I don't necessarily care that much. And I don't mean that I don't care, because I think the basic science is important. But for us, we feel like we've got to meet our patients and the community where they live. And the enemy of success is perfection. So, the idea of maybe overcooking a tomato, that you're going to lose some of the antioxidants, et cetera, or not cooking the fish absolutely perfectly. I just want people to cook because they're not. And if you just getting them into the kitchen is step number one for us. And once they're there, then we teach them how to cook their pasta al dente. And we teach them how to use tomatoes properly, both fresh, cooked, et cetera. So I think sometimes with these types of arguments at the molecular level, at the basic level in biochemistry, we're splitting hairs, because America doesn't cook, and America needs to start cooking.
Yes, go ahead.
And I agree 100%. It's really not how you cook the food. It's that when you're eating it, you don't speak English.
Well, on that note, we'll conclude. It's really been a fascinating session, and there's an awful lot to digest in such a short time. I think you doctors did a wonderful job of trying to condense everything you want to tell us into such a short time. We've learned about the American diet, how it affects our health, how we need to cook, how we need to cook in the Mediterranean diet. And I hope it's sessions like this and discussions that we're having that will put us on the road to a better health, to understanding the relationship between food and health. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us.